The old reservation school bus wheezed to a stop outside the small wooden house, its yellow paint peeling like sunburned skin. 8-year-old Jamie Clearwater pressed his face against the cool window, watching the dust settle around their mailbox that leaned slightly to the left. His backpack, patched with duct tape in 3 places, felt heavier today than usual. Inside were the crumpled papers he hoped his mother wouldn't have to see. The screen door creaked as Jamie pushed it open, the familiar sound that meant home. The scent of fry bread still lingered in the air from breakfast, mixed with the sage his grandmother burned each morning. His mother, Sarah, looked up from the kitchen table where bills were spread like playing cards in a losing hand. Her long black hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and the worry lines around her eyes seemed deeper than they had been that morning. "How was school, baby?" she asked, attempting a smile that didn't quite reach her tired eyes. At 26, Sarah Clearwater carried the weight of the world on her shoulders. She had been barely 18 when Jamie was born, and his father had disappeared before Jamie took his first steps. Now, 7 years later, she worked 2 jobs to keep their small home on the Modoc reservation, while raising her son alone. Jamie dropped his backpack by the door and walked to his mother, wrapping his small arms around her waist. "It was okay, Mum," Mrs. Patterson said. "I'm getting better at reading." Sarah's heart swelled with pride, but she noticed the way Jamie avoided her eyes. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Did anything else happen today?" The boy's shoulders tensed slightly. At school, during lunch, some of the older kids had been talking about their fathers. Tommy Riverside bragged about how his dad was teaching him to fish this weekend. Maria Santos showed off the new bike her father had bought her for her birthday. When they asked Jamie about his dad, he had quietly said he didn't have one. The teasing that followed had stung more than any physical wound. "Mum," Jamie said softly, still holding on to her, "why don't I have a dad like the other kids?" Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She had been dreading this conversation, but knew it would come eventually. She gently pulled Jamie back so she could look at his face, her hands resting on his small shoulders. "You know what, Jamie? Not all families look the same. Some have mums and dads, some have just mums, some have just dads, and some have grandparents or aunts and uncles. What makes a family special isn't who's in it, but how much they love each other. But Tommy's dad is teaching him to fish, and Maria's dad bought her a bike. Who's going to teach me things? Who's going to buy me stuff?" Sarah felt her chest tighten. She worked at the reservation's small grocery store during the day and cleaned offices in the nearby town 3 nights a week. Every penny went toward rent, food, and Jamie's clothes that he seemed to outgrow every few months. There wasn't money for bikes or fishing trips. "I can teach you things, baby. Remember when I taught you to make fry bread? And how to identify the different birds that come to our feeder." "That's different, Mum. That's girl stuff." The innocent comment hit Sarah like a physical blow. She realized that despite all her efforts, Jamie was beginning to feel the absence of a male figure in his life. The other children's comments at school were making him question his own identity and worth. Before Sarah could respond, the sound of heavy boots on the front porch interrupted them. Through the screen door, they could see a tall silhouette. Sarah's heart began to race. Very few people visited their home, especially unannounced. The knock was firm but not aggressive. Sarah approached the door cautiously, Jamie hiding behind her legs. On the other side of the screen stood a man she had never seen before. He was Native American, probably in his 40s, with graying hair braided down his back and wearing a simple flannel shirt and jeans. His face was weathered but kind, with deep-set dark eyes that seemed to hold years of wisdom. "Ma'am, I'm sorry to bother you. My name is Robert Modoc. I work with the Tribal Youth Program, and I was wondering if I might have a word with you about your son." Sarah's protective instincts flared immediately. "What about my son? Is he in some kind of trouble?" Robert held up his hands in a peaceful gesture. "No trouble at all, ma'am. Actually, quite the opposite. His teacher, Mrs. Patterson, mentioned that Jamie might benefit from some of our mentorship programs. May I come in? I promise this will just take a few minutes." Sarah hesitated. She had heard of Robert Modoc but had never met him personally. He was something of a legend on the reservation, a former Marine who had returned home after serving 2 tours overseas and dedicated his life to helping Native American children. The tribal youth program he ran was highly respected, but Sarah had always been too proud to ask for help. I suppose you can come in for a minute, she said, unlatching the screen door. Robert stepped inside, and Jamie immediately noticed how the man seemed to fill the room not with intimidation, but with a calm, steady presence. The house felt different with him there, safer somehow. Thank you, Mrs. Clearwater. I hope you don't mind me saying, but you have a beautiful home. And this must be Jamie. Robert turned to the boy, who was still partially hidden behind his mother. It's nice to meet you, young man. Jamie peeked out shyly. There was something about this stranger that felt familiar, though he couldn't place what it was. Please sit down, Sarah said, gesturing to their small couch. Can I get you some coffee? Water? Coffee would be nice, thank you. As Sarah busied herself in the kitchen, Robert sat down and looked around the modest living room. Everything was clean and well maintained despite being old and worn. Family photos decorated a small shelf, and Jamie's school artwork was proudly displayed on the refrigerator. This was clearly a home filled with love, even if it was lacking in material possessions. So, Modoc, Sarah said, returning with 2 steaming mugs, what exactly did Mrs. Patterson tell you? She mentioned that Jamie is a bright boy with a lot of potential, but that he seems to be struggling with some confidence issues lately. She thought he might benefit from having a male mentor, someone to spend time with. Teach him some traditional skills, maybe help him connect with his cultural heritage. Sarah's defenses went up immediately. Are you saying I'm not doing a good enough job raising my son? Not at all, Robert said quickly. From what I can see, you're doing an incredible job. Jamie is polite, well-behaved, and clearly loved. But sometimes, especially for boys his age, having a male role model can be beneficial. It doesn't replace what you're doing as his mother. It supplements it. Jamie had been listening to every word from his spot on the floor where he was pretending to play with his toy cars. The idea of having someone like a dad, even temporarily, made his heart race with excitement. But he also saw the worry on his mother's face and didn't want to upset her. What exactly would this mentorship involve? Sarah asked, her voice still cautious. Well, that would depend on what Jamie is interested in and what you're comfortable with. It might be teaching him to fish or hunt, showing him how to do basic home repairs, or sharing stories about our people's history and traditions. The goal is to help him develop confidence and a strong sense of identity. I don't know, Sarah said slowly. Jamie and I, we've always gotten by on our own. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with strangers getting involved in our lives. Robert nodded understandingly. I completely respect that, Mrs. Boa. Clearwater. You don't know me, and you have every right to be protective of your son. Perhaps I could start by telling you a little about myself. Sarah gestured for him to continue, though her posture remained guarded. I grew up here on the reservation, but I left when I was 18 to join the Marines. I spent 12 years in the military, including 2 deployments to Afghanistan. When I came back home, I realized I wanted to give back to my community. I started working with kids who were struggling, some because they didn't have fathers, some because they were getting into trouble, some because they just needed someone to believe in them. And how do I know you're trustworthy? Sarah asked bluntly. You don't, and you shouldn't take my word for it. I can give you references, other parents in the community whose children I've worked with. You can call the tribal council office and ask about me. You can even speak with the police chief if you want. I've worked with his department on several youth intervention programs. Jamie looked up from his toys, his young mind processing everything he was hearing. The idea of learning to fish like Tommy's dad, or maybe even learning to fix things around the house so his mum wouldn't have to struggle with the leaky faucet or the loose board on the front steps, filled him with excitement. Mom, he said softly, could I maybe learn to fish? Sarah looked down at her son's hopeful face and felt her heart breaking. She had always known that eventually Jamie would need things she couldn't provide. She had hoped that day was still far away, but perhaps it had arrived sooner than she expected. Let me think about it, baby, she said gently. Robert stood up, sensing it was time to leave. Mrs. Clearwater, I don't want to pressure you into anything. Here's my card with my phone number. If you decide you'd like to explore this further, give me a call. If not, I completely understand. The most important thing is that Jamie feels loved and supported, and it's clear he has that with you. Sarah walked Robert to the door, her mind spinning with conflicting emotions. Part of her wanted to slam the door and pretend this conversation had never happened. another part recognized that her son's question about not having a father was just the beginning of many difficult conversations to come. "Mr. Modoc," she said as he reached the porch, "if I were to consider this, what would happen if Jamie got attached to you, and then you disappeared?" He's already been abandoned by one man in his life. The question hit Robert deeply. He turned back to face her, his expression serious. "Mrs. Clearwater, I can't promise that life won't sometimes get complicated, but I can promise you this. I make a commitment to Jamie. I will honor it. I've been working with kids in this community for 8 years now, and I've never walked away from a child who needed me." After Robert left, Sarah and Jamie ate dinner in relative quiet. Sarah's mind was racing with thoughts and worries, while Jamie kept thinking about the possibility of learning to fish and maybe having someone to teach him the things other dads taught their sons. As she tucked Jamie into bed that night, he looked up at her with his big, dark eyes. "Mum, are you mad about Mr. Modoc coming over?" "No, baby, I'm not mad. I'm just thinking about what's best for you. Do you think he's nice?" Sarah considered the question carefully. Her first impression of Robert Modoc had been positive, despite her wariness. There had been something genuine about him, something that suggested he truly cared about helping children rather than just going through the motions of a job. He seemed nice, but you know what I always tell you about strangers? That I should be careful and not trust them right away. That's right. But sometimes, after we get to know people better, strangers can become friends. Jamie was quiet for a moment. "Mum, would it be okay if I wanted to learn boy things with Mr. Alfco, Modoc? I would still love you the most." Sarah felt tears prick at her eyes. Her son's innocent concern about hurting her feelings while expressing his own needs showed a maturity beyond his years. "Oh, sweetheart, of course it would be okay. You loving other people doesn't mean you love me any less. Love isn't like a pie where if you give some away, there's less left. Love grows bigger when you share it." That night, after Jamie had fallen asleep, Sarah sat at her kitchen table staring at Robert Modoc's business card. She thought about her own childhood and how her father had taught her to be strong and independent. But she also remembered the special bond he had shared with her older brother, the hunting trips, the talks about becoming a man, the way her brother had stood a little taller after those experiences. She thought about Jamie's question about why he didn't have a dad, and she knew it wouldn't be the last time he asked. As he grew older, the questions would become more complex, and eventually he would need answers she couldn't provide. Maybe having a mentor wouldn't solve everything, but it might help Jamie develop the confidence and sense of identity he would need to navigate the challenges ahead. The next morning, as Sarah walked Jamie to the bus stop, she noticed how he seemed more subdued than usual. The conversation from the night before was clearly still on his mind. "You know what, Jamie?" she said, kneeling down to his level. "I've been thinking about Mr. Cupper, Modoc's visit yesterday. Maybe we should find out more about this mentorship program." Jamie's face immediately brightened. "Really, Mum? You mean it?" "I mean it. But we'll take it slow, okay? Maybe Mr. Modoc can come over for dinner sometime and we can all get to know each other better." As the school bus pulled away with Jamie waving excitedly from the window, Sarah felt a mixture of hope and terror. She was about to open their carefully protected world to an outsider, something she hadn't done since Jamie's father had left. But looking at her son's joyful expression, she knew she had made the right decision. That evening, Sarah made the phone call that would change everything. "Hello, Mr. Modoc. This is Sarah Clearwater. I was wondering if you might be free to come for dinner this Friday evening. Jamie and I would like to learn more about your mentorship program." The warmth in Robert's voice was immediate. "I would be honored, Clearwater. Thank you for giving me this opportunity." As Sarah hung up the phone, she felt as if she had just stepped off a cliff. But sometimes, she realized, you had to take a leap of faith to help the people you love soar. Friday evening arrived with the kind of golden sunset that painted the reservation hills in shades of amber and rose. Sarah had spent most of the day nervously cleaning their already spotless house and preparing a meal that would honor their potential guest. The aroma of her grandmother's elk stew recipe filled the kitchen, mixed with the sweet scent of fresh cornbread cooling on the counter. Jamie had been bouncing off the walls with excitement since getting home from school. He had changed clothes 3 times, finally settling on his best jeans and a button-down shirt that Sarah had bought for church services. His hair was combed neatly, and he kept checking himself in the bathroom mirror, practicing the handshake his mother had taught him. "Remember, Jamie, we're just getting to know Mr. Modoc tonight. This doesn't mean anything is decided yet, Sarah reminded him as she stirred the stew one final time. I know, Mum, but maybe you'll like our food and want to come back, Jamie said hopefully. At exactly 6 o'clock, the sound of boots on the front porch announced Robert's arrival. Sarah took a deep breath, smoothed her hair, and went to answer the door. Robert stood there holding a small wrapped package and wearing a clean button-down shirt tucked into pressed jeans. His long hair was freshly braided, and his weathered hands held a bouquet of wildflowers. Good evening, Mrs. Clearwater. Thank you again for inviting me. These are for you, he said, offering the flowers with a slight bow of his head that spoke of old-fashioned manners and respect. They're beautiful, thank you. Please come in. And please call me Sarah. Robert stepped inside and immediately noticed the care Sarah had taken to prepare for his visit. The small dining table was set with her best dishes, and candles flickered warmly in the center. The house smelled incredible, like comfort and tradition all wrapped together. Something smells amazing, Robert said genuinely. It's been a long time since I've been invited to a home-cooked meal. Jamie appeared from behind his mother, his nervous excitement barely contained. Hi, Mr. Modoc. Mum made elk stew, and I helped with the cornbread. Well, hello there, Jamie. You clean up pretty nice, Robert said with a warm smile. And this is for you. He handed the boy the wrapped package. Jamie looked to his mother for permission before accepting the gift. Inside was a small, carved wooden eagle, beautifully crafted with intricate detail in every feather. I made this myself, Robert explained. The eagle represents strength and courage in our culture. I thought you might like to have it. Jamie's eyes widened as he turned the carving over in his small hands.
You made this? It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
Sarah watched the exchange with mixed emotions. Robert's gesture was thoughtful and appropriate, but it also reminded her of how little she had been able to give Jamie in terms of handmade gifts or cultural teachings. Her long work hours left little time for such things. During dinner, Robert proved to be an excellent storyteller. He shared tales from his childhood on the reservation, his experiences in the military, and funny incidents from his work with other children. Jamie hung on every word, occasionally asking questions that showed his sharp young mind was processing everything. Modoc, were you scared when you were in the war? Jamie asked during a lull in the conversation. Robert considered the question seriously. Yes, Jamie, I was scared sometimes. Being scared doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. But you know what I learned? Courage isn't about not being scared. Courage is about doing what needs to be done even when you are scared. Like when Mom had to take me to the hospital when I broke my arm. She was scared, but she drove really fast and stayed with me the whole time. Robert looked at Sarah with respect. Your mom showed real courage that day. She put your needs first even though she was frightened. As the evening progressed, Sarah found herself relaxing despite her initial nervousness. Robert asked thoughtful questions about Jamie's interests and schoolwork, and he listened carefully to the boy's animated responses about his favorite subjects and the books he was reading. More importantly, he also engaged Sarah in conversation, asking about her work and showing genuine interest in her thoughts about Jamie's education and future. After dinner, while Sarah cleaned the dishes, Robert and Jamie sat on the living room floor looking at Jamie's collection of library books. The boy had pulled out every volume he owned, eager to share his treasures with his new friend. This one's about wolves, Jamie explained, opening a nature book. Did you know they live in packs and take care of each other? I did know that, Robert said. Wolves are very much like people in some ways. They're loyal to their families, and they work together to take care of everyone in the pack. In our traditional stories, the wolf is often seen as a teacher. What do wolves teach? They teach us about the importance of family, about working together, and about protecting those who can't protect themselves. Sarah paused in her dishwashing, listening to the conversation from the kitchen. Mr. Modoc, Jamie said quietly, my mum works really hard to take care of me. Sometimes she comes home so tired she falls asleep on the couch. That shows how much she loves you, Jamie. Your mother is like the alpha wolf in your pack. She's willing to do whatever it takes to make sure you're safe and healthy. But sometimes I wish I could help her more. I try to do my homework without being asked and keep my room clean, but I'm too little to get a job or fix things when they break. Robert's heart went out to this young boy who was already carrying the weight of adult concerns. You know what, Jamie? You help your mother in more ways than you probably realize. When you do well in school, that makes her proud. When you're kind and respectful, that makes her happy. And when you love her the way you do, That gives her the strength to keep going when things get tough. Really? Really? But you know what else? Part of growing up is learning how to take care of yourself and eventually help take care of others. That's something I could teach you if you and your mother decide you'd like me to be part of your life. Jamie's eyes lit up. You mean like learning to fix things and maybe fishing? Exactly like that. And other things too, like understanding your heritage as a Native American, learning about the history of our people, and developing the skills you'll need to become a strong, responsible man. From the kitchen, Sarah felt her throat tighten with emotion. This was exactly what she had feared and hoped for. Someone who could offer Jamie the guidance she couldn't provide, but who might also make her feel less essential in her son's life. When the dishes were finished, Sarah joined Robert and Jamie in the living room. She found them looking through a photo album Jamie had pulled from the shelf. Pictures of him as a baby, his first day of school, birthdays, and various family gatherings with Sarah's extended relatives.
Your mom has done a wonderful job documenting your life, Robert told Jamie.
These pictures tell the story of a boy who was very loved. That's my Uncle Danny, Jamie said, pointing to a photo from his 6th birthday party. He lives in California now, but he sends me postcards sometimes. And that's my Grandma Rose. She lives in the senior center in town. I know Grandma Rose, Robert said with a smile. She used to be friends with my grandmother. Small world. As the evening wound down, Robert helped Jamie put his books away while Sarah prepared coffee for the adults. When Jamie announced he was getting sleepy, Sarah took him upstairs for his bedtime routine, leaving Robert alone in the living room. Looking around the modest space, Robert could see the love that had gone into making this house a home. Every corner showed evidence of Sarah's devotion to her son, from the carefully framed school photos to the small repairs that had been made with obvious care despite limited resources. This was a family that had weathered difficulties together and emerged stronger. When Sarah returned downstairs, she found Robert standing by the window, looking out at the star-filled sky. It's beautiful out here, he said softly. I sometimes forget how peaceful it can be away from town. It is peaceful, Sarah agreed, settling into a chair across from him. Sometimes too peaceful. Jamie doesn't have many children to play with out here, and I worry that he's too isolated. Robert turned from the window and sat back down on the couch. Sarah, can I ask you something personal? She nodded, though her posture tensed slightly. What are your biggest concerns about Jamie having a mentor? Sarah was quiet for a long moment, considering her answer. I suppose I'm afraid that he'll get attached to you and then you'll leave. His father promised to be part of his life, and then just disappeared one day. I don't think Jamie really remembers him, but I do remember the confusion and hurt I felt, and I don't want my son to experience that. That's a very legitimate concern, Robert said seriously. Has Jamie asked about his father? Recently, yes. And not just simple questions. He's starting to notice what he doesn't have compared to other children. And it breaks my heart because I can't give him everything he needs. Sarah, can I tell you something? In all my years working with children, I've learned that kids don't need perfect parents or perfect situations. They need consistency, love, and adults who believe in them. From what I've seen tonight, Jamie has all of those things with you, but he doesn't have a male role model. No, he doesn't. But that doesn't mean you failed him. It means you're wise enough to recognize when he might benefit from additional support. Sarah felt tears threatening. I've worked so hard to be everything he needs. 2 jobs trying to keep up with homework help, teaching him right from wrong. But lately I feel like no matter what I do, it's not enough. Sarah, look at me, Robert said gently. You have raised an incredible little boy. He's polite, intelligent, curious, and clearly secure in your love. That didn't happen by accident. That happened because you've been an exceptional mother. Then why do I feel like I'm failing him? Because you love him so much that you want to give him everything, even the things you can't provide. But here's what I've learned. It takes a village to raise a child, not because parents are inadequate, but because children benefit from having multiple adults who care about them and can teach them different things. Sarah wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. So you don't think I'm a bad mother for considering letting someone else into Jamie's life? I think you're an incredible mother for putting Jamie's needs ahead of your own fears. They talked for another hour, with Robert sharing stories about other families he had worked with and Sarah asking detailed questions about what a mentorship would look like. She learned that Robert's approach was always to work with the family, not to replace anyone, and that his goal was to help children develop confidence and skills while maintaining their primary bonds with their parents. If we decide to move forward, Sarah said finally, what would happen first? First, we'd start very slowly. Maybe I'd pick Jamie up for a few hours on a Saturday afternoon, take him fishing, or teach him some basic camping skills. We'd always discuss activities with you ahead of time, and Jamie would always know that you're in charge of any major decisions about his life. And if it doesn't work out, if Jamie doesn't connect with you, or if I become uncomfortable with the arrangement, then we stop, no questions asked and no hard feelings. The whole point is to help Jamie, not to create stress for your family. As Robert prepared to leave, Jamie called down from upstairs. Modoc, are you leaving? Yes, Jamie, but I hope I'll see you again soon. Me too. Thank you for the eagle. I'm going to put it on my nightstand. After Robert left, Sarah tucked Jamie into bed for the second time. He was clutching the carved eagle and could barely contain his excitement. Mom, I really like Mr. Modoc. He listens to me like I'm a grown-up, and he knows so many interesting things. Do you think he might want to be my mentor? Sarah smoothed the hair back from Jamie's forehead. What do you think? Do you feel comfortable with him? Yes, I do. He makes me feel like maybe I could learn to do all the things other dads teach their kids. And Mom? Yes, baby. He said really nice things about you. I think he knows how special you are. That night, Sarah lay in bed thinking about the evening. Robert Modoc had surprised her in many ways. She had expected someone who might try to take over or make her feel inadequate. Instead, she had found someone who seemed to genuinely respect her role as Jamie's mother and who wanted to support rather than replace her efforts. The next morning, Jamie woke up early and came to his mother's room, the wooden eagle still clutched in his hand. Mom, I had the best dream. Mr. Modoc was teaching me to fish, and I caught this huge trout, and when we brought it home, you cooked it for dinner and said you were proud of me. Sarah pulled her son onto the bed beside her. That sounds like a wonderful dream, baby. Do you think it could happen for real? Sarah looked at her son's hopeful face and made a decision that had been forming in her heart since the previous evening. You know what, Jamie? I think it might. Would you like me to call Mr. Modoc and tell him we'd like to try the mentorship program? Jamie's response was to throw his arms around his mother's neck and hug her so tightly she could barely breathe. Really, Mom? You really mean it? I really mean it. But remember, we'll start slowly and see how it goes. As Sarah made breakfast, she felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in years. For the first time since Jamie's father had left, she felt like she wasn't carrying the entire weight of parenthood alone. She still had concerns and would continue to be protective of her son, but she was ready to trust that sometimes asking for help was the strongest thing a parent could do. 3 months had passed since Robert Modoc first walked into their lives, and the change in Jamie was remarkable. What had started as tentative Saturday afternoon outings had blossomed into a genuine mentorship that was transforming not just Jamie, but the entire Clearwater household. The first fishing trip had been everything Jamie had dreamed of, and more. Robert had picked him up early on a crisp Saturday morning, his truck loaded with fishing gear and a cooler packed with sandwiches. They had driven to a quiet spot along the river where Robert had patiently taught Jamie to cast his line, to read the water for signs of fish, and most importantly, to be patient. Fishing isn't really about catching fish, Robert had explained as they sat on the riverbank, their lines disappearing into the gentle current. It's about learning to be still, to observe the world around you, and to understand that good things come to those who wait. Jamie had caught his first fish that day, a small trout that fought with surprising strength. The pride on his face when he held it up for Robert to see was worth more than any expensive gift. That evening, when they returned home with their catch, Sarah had indeed cooked it for dinner, and her praise for Jamie's accomplishment had made the boy glow with happiness. But the mentorship had evolved into something much deeper than fishing trips. Robert had begun teaching Jamie traditional skills that connected him to his cultural heritage. They had spent afternoons learning to identify medicinal plants, understanding the stories behind the constellations, and practicing traditional crafts like beadwork and wood carving. Every man should know how to work with his hands, Robert told Jamie during one of their Saturday sessions. It connects you to your ancestors and teaches you that you can create something beautiful and useful from raw materials. Jamie's latest project was a small jewelry box he was making for his mother's upcoming birthday. Under Robert's patient guidance, he was learning to sand, measure, and fit the pieces together with the precision of a craftsman decades older. The changes in Jamie extended far beyond new skills. His confidence had grown tremendously, evident in the way he carried himself at school and interacted with other children. Mrs. Patterson had called Sarah to report that Jamie was participating more in class discussions and seemed more self-assured in social situations. But perhaps the most significant change was in how Jamie talked about the future, where once he had seemed uncertain about his place in the world, he now spoke with excitement about becoming a marine biologist who could help protect the rivers and forests of his homeland, or maybe a teacher who could pass on traditional skills to other children. Mr. Modoc says I can be anything I want if I work hard and never give up, Jamie told his mother one evening as she helped him with homework. He says being Native American makes me special because I have knowledge and traditions that go back thousands of years. Sarah watched her son's face light up as he talked about his latest adventures with Robert, and she felt a complex mixture of emotions. She was thrilled to see Jamie so happy and confident, but sometimes she felt a pang of something that might have been jealousy. Robert was giving Jamie experiences and wisdom that she simply couldn't provide, and occasionally she wondered if her son might start to see her as less important. These feelings came to a head on a particularly difficult evening in late October. Sarah had worked a double shift at the grocery store, covering for a co-worker who had called in sick. She had then rushed to her evening cleaning job, only to discover that one of the office workers had made an enormous mess that took her twice as long as usual to clean. By the time she arrived home, it was nearly 10 o'clock and she was exhausted. Jamie was already in bed, but he was still awake, reading by the light of his bedside lamp. When Sarah peeked into his room, she found him studying a book about Native American history that Robert had given him. "Hi, Mom," Jamie said, looking up from his reading. "Mr. Modoc told me about this really cool ceremony where young men prove they're ready to become adults. He said maybe when I'm older I could participate in something like that." Sarah felt something snap inside her chest. "That's nice, honey. Did you get your homework done?" "Yeah, Mr. Modoc helped me with my math when he dropped me off this afternoon. He's really good at explaining fractions." "I see. Well, it's late. Time for lights out." "Okay, Mum. Mr. Modoc said he might take me camping next weekend if you say it's okay." "Can I go, please?" Sarah's exhaustion and the complex emotions she had been suppressing for weeks suddenly overwhelmed her. "Jamie, not everything is about Mr. Modoc." "I'm your mother. I'm the one who takes care of you every day, who works 2 jobs to keep a roof over your head and food on the table. I'm the one who was here when you were sick with the flu last month, and I'm the one who helps you with your homework most nights." Jamie's face crumpled with confusion and hurt. He had never heard his mother speak with such a sharp tone, and he didn't understand what he had done wrong. "I'm sorry, Mum. I didn't mean to make you mad." Seeing her son's distress immediately broke through Sarah's emotional fog. She sat down on the edge of his bed and pulled him into her arms. "Oh, baby, I'm not mad at you. I'm just tired and feeling a little left out. Sometimes it seems like you have more fun with Mr. Modoc than you do with me." Jamie pulled back to look at his mother's face. "It's not true, Mum. I love spending time with you. It's just different with Mr. Modoc. He teaches me boy things that you don't know about. But you're still my favorite person in the whole world." "Really? Really, Mr. Stelle? Modoc is great, but you're my mum. That's way more important than anything else." Sarah felt tears sting her eyes. "I love you so much, Jamie. I guess I've been worried that you might start thinking Mr. Modoc is better than me." "Mom, that's silly. Mr. Modoc tells me all the time how lucky I am to have you. He says you're the strongest person he knows, and that he wishes all the kids he works with had moms who love them as much as you love me. He says that all the... Just yesterday, when I was complaining about having to clean my room, he told me that your job is to teach me to be responsible, and that I should listen to you because you know what's best for me. He said I should always remember that he's just a helper, but you're my real family." Sarah felt a wave of gratitude toward Robert that was almost overwhelming. Not only was he providing Jamie with experiences and guidance she couldn't offer, but he was doing it in a way that reinforced rather than undermined her authority as Jamie's mother. The next morning, Sarah called Robert and asked if he could stop by for coffee. When he arrived, she was waiting with fresh coffee and a plate of his favorite cookies that Jamie had helped her make. "Robert, I need to talk to you about something," she said after they had settled at the kitchen table. "Of course. Is everything all right?"
Did something happen with Jamie?
Nothing happened. In fact, that's kind of the point. Last night I had a moment where I felt jealous of the relationship you have with Jamie. I was tired and stressed, and I started feeling like maybe he was getting more attached to you than to me. Robert's expression grew serious. "Sarah, I'm so sorry if I've done anything to make you feel that way."
That was never my intention!
You didn't do anything wrong. In fact, you did everything right. When Jamie talked to me about it, I realized that you've been very careful to make sure he knows I'm the most important person in his life, even while you're building your own relationship with him. That's because it's true. You are the most important person in his life, and you always should be. My role is to supplement what you're already doing, not to compete with it. I know that now. And I want to thank you for the way you've handled this whole mentorship. You've given Jamie so much confidence and knowledge, but you've also constantly reinforced that I'm his mother and that my role is irreplaceable. Robert smiled warmly. "Sarah, can I tell you something? In all the years I've been doing this work, I've never seen a child more devoted to his parent than Jamie is to you. Everything he learns, everything he does, he wants to share with you. You've created such a strong bond with that boy that nothing and no one could ever threaten it. Sometimes I forget that. Single parenting can be so overwhelming, and it's easy to feel insecure."
You have nothing to feel insecure about.
Jamie is turning into an amazing young man, and that's primarily because of the foundation you've given him. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of the school bus stopping outside. A few minutes later, Jamie burst through the front door, his backpack flying as he rushed to hug both Sarah and Robert. "Guess what? I got an A on my history report about Native American traditions." Patterson said it was the best report she'd ever received from a third grader. Sarah felt her heart swell with pride. The report had been Jamie's idea, inspired by the stories Robert had shared with him. He had spent weeks researching and writing, with both Sarah and Robert helping him in different ways. Sarah had helped with grammar and organization, while Robert had provided cultural context and traditional stories. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Sarah said, hugging him tightly. "I'm so proud of you." "I couldn't have done it without both of you," Jamie said, looking between his mother and his mentor. "Mom helped me make sure all my sentences were right, and Mr. Modoc told me the stories that made it really interesting." As the months continued to pass, the mentorship relationship deepened and evolved. Robert became a regular presence at family dinners, holiday celebrations, and school events. He was there when Jamie performed in the school's winter concert, cheering alongside Sarah as her son sang a traditional Native American song he had learned. He helped Jamie prepare for the regional science fair, where the boys' project about water conservation earned second place. But perhaps most importantly, Robert was there during the difficult moments too. When Jamie struggled with a bully at school, Robert worked with both Jamie and Sarah to develop strategies for handling the situation. When Sarah's grandmother passed away and the family went through a period of grief, Robert helped Jamie understand death and loss within the context of their cultural traditions. "In our culture, we believe that our ancestors never truly leave us," Robert explained to Jamie as they sat by the river where they had shared so many fishing expeditions. "Your great-grandmother's spirit will always be with you, guiding you and watching over you." "Will she know about all the things I'm learning with you?" Jamie asked. "I believe she will, and I think she would be very proud of the young man you're becoming." As Jamie's 9th birthday approached, Sarah and Robert worked together to plan a celebration that would honor both his growing maturity and his cultural heritage. They decided to hold the party at the river, combining traditional games and activities with more modern celebrations. The day of the party dawned clear and bright. Extended family members, school friends, and several other families from Robert's mentorship program gathered along the riverbank. Sarah had prepared traditional foods, while Robert had organized activities like canoe races and a storytelling circle. But the highlight of the day came when Robert presented Jamie with a special gift: a handmade bow that he had been crafting in secret for months. The bow was sized perfectly for Jamie's growing frame and decorated with traditional designs that told the story of the boy's family heritage. "This bow represents your passage from little boy to young man," Robert said as the entire party gathered around. "It was made with intention and love, and it carries the hopes of everyone who cares about you." Jamie's eyes filled with tears as he accepted the gift. "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." "Thank you, Mr. Modoc." "You're welcome, Jamie. But remember, this bow is just a tool. The real strength comes from inside you, from the love your mother has given you, the traditions of your ancestors, and the choices you make every day to be a good person. As the celebration continued around them, Sarah watched her son demonstrate his new bow to his friends, Robert standing beside him offering gentle guidance. She realized that her initial fears about the mentorship had been completely unfounded. Rather than taking anything away from their relationship, Robert's presence had actually strengthened the bond between her and Jamie. That evening, after all the guests had gone home and the dishes were washed, the three of them sat on the front porch watching the sunset paint the hills in brilliant colors. Jamie was leaning against his mother, contentedly examining his new bow, while Robert sat in a nearby chair, sharing quiet conversation with Sarah about upcoming plans and activities. "Mom," Jamie said suddenly, "I want to tell you something important." "What is it, baby?" "Today was the best birthday I've ever had, and it's not because of the presents or the party. It's because I had both you and Mr. Modoc there together. It felt like we're a real family." Sarah felt her throat tighten with emotion. "We are a real family, Jamie. Families aren't always just parents and children. Sometimes they include other people who love us and care about us." "Like Mr. Modoc?" Sarah looked over at Robert, who was watching the exchange with gentle eyes. "Yes, like Mr. Budc, Modoc. He's become part of our family because he chose to care about you, and because we chose to trust him with something very precious. You." Jamie sat up and looked directly at Robert. "Mr. Modoc, would it be okay if I called you Uncle Robert sometimes?" "Not all the time, just when it feels right." Robert's eyes misted over. In all his years of working with children, no one had ever asked to call him uncle. It was an honor he had never expected but would treasure forever. "Jamie, I would be very honored if you called me Uncle Robert. That would make me one of the luckiest men in the world." As darkness settled over the reservation and the three of them finally went inside, Sarah reflected on the journey they had all taken together. What had started as her desperate attempt to give Jamie something she couldn't provide had evolved into something much richer and more complex. Robert hadn't just become Jamie's mentor. He had become part of their family in a way that enhanced rather than threatened the bond between mother and son. Jamie had gained not just skills and confidence, but a deeper understanding of his heritage and his place in the world. And Sarah had gained not just help with parenting, but a friend and partner in raising the child they both loved. Later that night, as Sarah tucked Jamie into bed, he looked up at her with sleepy contentment. "Mom, remember when I asked you why I don't have a dad like the other kids? I remember. I don't think about that anymore. I think I have something even better. I have you, and I have Uncle Robert, and I have all our family and friends who care about me. Some kids only have one dad, but I have a whole bunch of people who love me." As Sarah turned off the light and closed Jamie's door, she realized that her son had discovered something that had taken her much longer to understand, that love multiplies when it's shared, that families come in many forms, and that sometimes the most unexpected answers to our prayers turn out to be exactly what we needed all along. The reservation was quiet under the star-filled sky, but the Clearwater house was filled with the peaceful contentment that comes from a family, however unconventional, that has found its way home to each other.